Have you ever looked in the mirror and not like what you see? You could be overweight, underweight. You could be drinking too much, even be considered an alcoholic. Or you could be hooked on drugs. You really would like to break these chains that have a hold on you, but you don't know what to do. Well, on today's show, I have a phone interview with Ed Komara Jr. He will share how he went from rock bottom to rock solid. We would love to hear from you what the Lord is doing in your life or have seen in others. Write us at stories@themillenniumbeat.com or call us and leave a voicemail at 407-624-9957. We at the Millennium Beat are looking forward to hearing what the Lord is doing in your life. Remember that the Millennium Beat is helping people share their stories. Welcome to the Millennium Beat Podcast, where we like to encourage the world one story at a time. Now get ready to hear stories from around the world that encourage and uplift you. Now to the show with your host, Kevin James. Hey everybody, this is the Millennium Beat. I'm your host, Kevin James. Today I'm on the phone with Ed Komara Jr. Ed, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, it's good to be here. It's an honor. I appreciate it.
Let's go to the beginning of Ed's life. Ed, where did you come from?
I came from a little small town, steel town, in Youngstown, Ohio, about northeast, right up on Lake Erie, border of PA. Youngstown is actually, it's not something to be, very, well known for, but it was actually the two-time world capital for murder. So
Murder? Oh wow.
Yeah. So it's an interesting town because once it was a steel town. Born and raised all steel mills. And once those crashed and all came to a halt, the economy and everything kind of really took a hit and, it flipped. And that's kind of like where, where my life came into play, so I wasn't really a part of the, good of it. But so,
So you're basically saying you grew up on the shady side of town.
Yeah, it is. It's literally, I was in the middle of a ghetto.
Oh, wow.
To say the least. So, not the worst part of the ghetto, but, I was the only country kid, I call myself a country kid because grew up hunting, fishing, all that good stuff with my dad. And, that's my heart. So I was pretty much the only country boy, I guess you can say, in high school and stuff like that. And, it was definitely gender, race. It was definitely leaning towards the Hispanic and black and stuff. So it was less white. So I was not say I single myself out very easily, but it was not a hard upbringing, but it was different. I've learned how to engage with many different types of people. Which benefits to me now because I can really relate and talk to just about anyone. My wife now always kind of jokes about it, like, you're out there, with this and this, so, and like, you just don't fit in. I'm like, well, that's a good thing I'm not supposed to.
All right. So that was your early age. And then something happened to you in the first grade. Let's talk a little bit about that. What happened to you?
Yeah. So, it was a big scare, because obviously at that age, I didn't know what was going on, but, I was in a Catholic school, from kindergarten to sixth grade, but while I was at school, I just vividly, all I remember is, I was sitting in class one day and all of a sudden I just slumped over, and little did I know that I actually, had an asthma attack right in the middle of class, and, actually put me in the hospital for a couple of days, but from that point on, my life took a turn, and it's not like it was I don't know, it's weird how it planned out just because I wasn't able to from that point on almost be a normal kid growing up, from physical activities and playing and just engagement, involvement, and that limited me. And I never knew that because, when you're a kid, you just whatever your cards you're dealt, that's what you worked with. You didn't know how to, push past that. So gradually, as I moved up through the years, the weight started coming on, and obviously I had amazing parents and everything. So it's not like, they just like fed me like endless amount of stuff, but I was taken care of, and but it got to a point where, even by, up to, man, gosh, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, because I was there till sixth grade, Catholic school. But once I entered the real world, into junior high and the public schools, that's where that was a big cultural shock to me, because I went from a couple, like 100 kids in a school to hundreds, and lockers and all this different stuff. And, obviously it comes into play bullying and all that good stuff when you deal with that kind of stuff. So it's, so once that hit there and around that time frame, which, I'll get into about seventh grade, when I got into junior high school, I was a big kid by then. I was 172 pounds.
Wow.
I know my exact weight at that time. I was 172 pounds in seventh grade. And, I played a lot of backyard football. It's not like I wasn't active. I tried to play and be active the most I could, but I signed up. Me and my cousin signed up for the football, junior football. And since I was a big kid, my dad was like, let's get you in something. I was just, so I just went with it, and I actually ended up being really good. The only problem is, in that junior, it's not like it was like you're in a public school to where all that stuff doesn't matter. You just play. Well, in this league, they have weight classes, that's 95s, 115s, 135s, 145s. Well, I was pretty far off from even the highest, but they still let you play, play JV and stuff like that. But when it came to real games that counted, I wasn't allowed to play. I had to be at that weight. So I worked my tail off for a couple, it was a summer league. So I worked my butt off all summer. Every practice, everything, man. My dad was working with me behind the scenes, and during, I couldn't have been more than a couple months, just at the tail end of the last game of the season. I had a goal to play that last game, and I literally got to where I think I was like 2 or 3 pounds maybe away in, and I didn't get it. And you're talking about a kid in seventh grade working his tail off and almost losing 25 pounds in a single season just to play that last game, and I didn't get it. They gave me, honors, credit, and all this stuff, which was, it is what it is, but that didn't matter to me, because the hard work, I don't mind putting in the work, but getting to the point and not getting it was very a hit for me, because it was like, man, I put in so much work and it wasn't enough. You're talking about a kid in seventh grade. You're not talking about a grown adult. Get over yourself. This is still a kid. And so that didn't help me. And guess what? That weight just came right back. And I didn't play another season, no games. And don't get me wrong, I played some backyard football with my buddies growing up, which, we did that every other weekend, every weekend actually, but never really concentrate on the weight aspect anymore. I just kind of started accepting that this is who I am, and everything. I never had to use the inhaler, but I did have to use the machine, after practices and after games. I still had to use that thing, so it wasn't to the extent where I had the inhaler, but I did have to use the machine. But so yeah, and so that just kind of fast forward, through high school, and then you're getting into the partying and the drinking, and being a kid, and so that weight and all of those stuff, that doesn't matter. It's just flying by the way you see it and enjoying the time while you got it, And then, speaking from earlier when I told you, I was a country boy growing up, well, I actually got a full ride to go to private liberal arts school in Worcester, Ohio, and I actually turned that down to go to pay for school in college and to go down in Southern Ohio. And I went for wildlife resource management, because my heart was wildlife and animals conservation. And I actually went down there and I got my associates, graduated on time. Obviously the partying and drinking was heavy, but I mean, what college isn't? And but I always put my priorities first, no matter what. So I did graduate on time, and a lot of my buddies didn't, which kind of I'll talk about later on. What kind of led me to my rock bottom. But so yeah, when I graduated college, a defining moment for me, realizing like, and it's crazy that you can look yourself in the mirror just hundreds and thousands of times and just not really look at yourself. You look in the mirror, but you don't really look at yourself. You know what I'm saying? You don't speak to yourself. You don't. No, you don't. And you think. I mean, so you're just almost living by how people respond and react and talk to you. That almost becomes your identity. And then, obviously all through the years, I mean, the self-esteem and the confidence and all that stuff just was a fixed pot inside of me. I mean, and it was just, it got to a point in college where it overflowed finally, and everything came out. And I remember I was dressed up. I was literally my family was outside. This was graduation day, and literally had cap, gown, everything on. And already, and I literally was about to walk out the door, and I don't know why, but I just took one final look at myself in the mirror, and I broke. I was like, I didn't recognize myself. Like, I was like, this inside of me, I'm just thinking, this is supposed to be the best day of my life right now, up to now, and accomplished. First kid, and first, because I'm an only child, but first one of my family to graduate college and everything, and I'm like, this isn't what I anticipated. And then I just was like, I was at one of my heaviest, obviously, and I don't know, and I went through the motions of graduation, and the biggest thing that happened to me after graduation was that I did a practicum in Florida, actually in Vero Beach, where I live now, and for the government, for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. And I did a practicum for a whole summer because my aunt and uncle lived down here. That's the only family I had outside of Ohio. That's why Vero's pretty much where I landed. So when I did that, I got really great in with, some of the officers and just people in a job, in the government, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. And after I did that, I was already almost in like fully anticipated, all eggs in one basket about, applying for the internships and a job and stuff like that, and knew them, and they were like, yeah, definitely apply, and we're going to get you set up. It's not like it was a guarantee, but it was almost as guaranteed as you're going to get. So that's what I was looking forward to once I graduated. Well, it was about a month after that I didn't find out this until, but they actually relocated the head lady that I was pretty much, in with, up to North Carolina or South Carolina for a new position, which they brought a new guy in and obviously didn't know me for,
right,
paper. So, obviously I didn't have the qualification, everything that someone else probably else would. So that landed me right back in my hometown in Youngstown, Ohio, where they call it the black hole, because it just sucks you in, and no one. People say they'll always get out, but they just don't. They don't. And I just landed a simple factory job, and it was at that time where it was shortly after I graduated. So my buddies that didn't graduate on time, I actually went to one of their college, graduation parties. But prior to that, during that 6 month time, that's where the depression really sunk in, because I was like, I'm back home. What do I have to show for this? I got my degree. You know, I just that's where the depression hit, and I was never an going out bar partying kind of guy. I've always been very secluded, and I don't mind that. And I started drinking. I mean, it started, with a 6 pack after work. That soon turned into a 12 pack, and I could drink, even back in college. But this was a whole another level, and this is where the generational. This is a whole nother. This is where the generational curse comes in that killed my father's father and almost got my father, and now it's slowly creeping into me and my bloodstream. And I went all the way up to a 12 pack to a 24 pack, and next thing you know, I'm buying 30 packs. They don't have 30 packs down here in Florida, I don't think, but they have them up north. And I was getting literally a 30 pack of beer every night, and just making a fire or just hanging out outside or hanging out in the back room, still at my parents' house while my parents were divorced, but just still at home. And I mean, it lasted for about 6 months.
And you did that almost every day?
Yes, every day. I mean, I would show up to work, bloodshot eye, rank of alcohol. I mean, luckily I had great people there that loved me and that I was just, good. I was always a, good, respectful honor. It's not like I was a troublemaker. I just kind of did my thing. And, but yeah, every single day, man. And,
well, also I'm thinking of the money wise. I mean, if you were buying beer every day, that must have cost a pretty penny. I mean, 90% of your paycheck probably went to drinking.
Oh yeah. And luckily I had that, cushion because I was at home. I had no bills. I mean, I didn't have I was still, 21 years old. I didn't have, back from college. It's not like I was thrown into life and had all these bills and this stuff and cars and, payment. I didn't have any of that. I worked and whatever I wanted to do with my money, essentially, other than paying phone and stuff, I could do what I wanted. And, so I had that cushion, and guess what? I took full advantage of that, and I didn't cause no trouble. I just got my stuff, came home, and that's the first thing I did. And it was like water to me, man. It was just, I just downed it until they're all gone, and that's it. Most of the time I'll just crash, not knowing when I fell asleep, or especially when it came to the weekends, when I did go out with some of my friends into their house and stuff. I mean, it got to the point where I didn't even, first thing I wake up and I would look out my back window to see if make sure my car was there, because I didn't even know how I got home. I would drive home from anywhere I went, from friends mainly. And, I mean, it's a miracle that I've never killed anyone, looking back, and how many lives even that were with me driving. And, that's just the grace of God, because I just you take lives for granted, when it comes to those situations, and people don't realize that you're responsible. And, so that happened for about 6 month period of time. And then that's where I told you, one of my buddies graduated a little late. So, he invited me back down to the college town for a graduation party, and drove 3.5 hours down south, Southern Ohio, and had that nice all day graduation party, drinking all day, bar right next to big bonfire. I mean, it was in the sticks. You just do what you want. And it was an all day thing. And I'm one of those guys where if I'm not comfortable, and this is what led me to a lot of the drinking and driving, back during that past times, because whenever I don't like a lot of people. I don't like a lot of crowds. I don't like being, especially, when I'm kind of drinking. Like I told you, I'm a loner. I like seclusion. And, so it got to the point where it was like, look, this is too much. There's hundreds of people here. I'm out. And I actually drove back into town, got a hold of one of my buddies that lived in town, because we were just like a hop off the freeway, and to be able to crash at his house, because I was leaving the next morning to go back home. And, then one of my buddies was with me that drove down, and I drove up there, and you can throw a rock from his house to a gas station that I pulled into. So this is, it's not to say embarrassing, but it is what it is. But, I pulled to the gas station. fully anticipating, like, I'm just going to fill up my gas tank because, um, I'm going to be leaving in the morning. I'm already here. Whatever. I'm still calling. I mean, I've been drinking all day though. Like, I'm still coherent, fine quotation marks. But but I pulled in, pumping gas, and the sheriff pulls up behind me, and this is 2, 3 in the morning, and I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything. So, and he's just sitting there. And the moment I take that, you know, the lid off and put it right back, get done pumping gas, the moment that thing clicks, he gets out of his car. And from that point on, it was the show. It was walking on one foot, doing this, doing that, and doing the lines. And, and I failed every one of them. and it's crazy to think, because I look back, I'm like, before that reverse, I'm like, well, how did he even know that? Well, what I guess I did was, prior to pumping the gas, I pulled in, and I could have clear as day walked in the gas station, but I didn't. I chose to open the door, and I took a leak right there at the gas pump. Plain as day, no one around. 2, 3 in the morning. Sheriff's on the other side in the parking lot, watching this dude. And I got back in my car, and then I pulled out. But as I was pulling out, that's where it hit me that, well, I might as well just fill up. I'm here. So I did a quick out and back in. That's when I started pumping gas, and for the life of me, I didn't almost remember that. It's crazy that I didn't remember that until the police report. But yeah, he took me right to the station, and I blew a .217. And I mean, I remember every single bit of it. Like, that's how good my tolerance was. But it didn't. I mean, it doesn't reflect on that, functionality though. Functionality, I was shot. And luckily, they kept my car there and stuff. And my buddy ended up picking me up, taking me back to the house, took my license. My buddy that was with me got an underage, and I'll never forget that morning, waking up, calling my mom, and most gut wrenching moment of my life. And my buddy had to drive me back, and when we got home, I just remember my mom wasn't. It was the moment where it's the upset that you don't want. It's not the mad, it's the upset. And then I had to go through the motions of going back down there for court, this and that, 3.5 hours away, no license, all that good stuff. Well, by the time, I got a lawyer and got everything knocked down to 6 months license loss and DUI school, during that time, when I finally realized that's where, I mean, I was literally still going into work. My buddy worked with me right down the road. He drove me. I mean, I was literally going into the bathroom, sticking my finger down my throat, trying to make myself puke. And that's how bad I felt about myself. That not even about just me and my life, but letting everyone down, my family, just my future. Like, now, what do I have to live for? Like, I have nothing to show for this. And now, always a good kid growing up, never really got in trouble. Not say I was an angel, but I never got in trouble. I just never messed with the law, kind of thing. So when the most extreme kind of law thing hit, it was just a shock to my core, and it shook me and rattled me, and it broke me. I mean, I cracked, and that's where the rock bottom moment hit for me, and that's where my testimony really stems from, the rock hard faith. I hit rock bottom, man, and obviously it runs in family that you need sometimes, with a hard head, you got to learn the hard way. But another defining moment that actually turned the switch for me as far as a change goes. So I talked about all the negative and all that kind of stuff that really impacted me, to get to the point where that DUI score, this is where I tell people that how powerful your testimony is, because if I would never had these moments in this time, and although they're the hardest times you can ever go through, um, they lead you into giving something back to others in your future, to be able to share, to encourage people. Because I've talked to people that's had 3, 4, 5, but never change. And that's a choice. It's a daily choice. It doesn't just happen. But when I went through that DUI school for that weekend, no cell phones, no nothing, cut off from the world. It really, I walked in there and I'm sitting there and I'm around people that are shaking, like twitching, and I'm like, I don't belong here. Like, I don't belong here. I do, but I don't. And the very last thing that lady up front said to us, the whole weekend was kind of just like, yeah, I already know this stuff, obviously. But the last thing that she literally said to us, she said, before you walk out, she said, I got to tell you this. She's like, statistics say that more than half of you guys will be back for a second one. And the moment she said that, most people would say, oh, nah, yeah, whatever. Well, that's kind of, it was different though. It was a switch in my mind that I didn't see it as, no way, Jose kind of thing. I seen it as, I'm not a statistic. Like, I literally just got, like, for my whole life, I've felt like nothing. And now I've finally been labeled as just a statistic, a number. And it just rocked me. Like, that's when I think the Lord really, really just flipped my mind. Just a total revelation mindset, like, just flipped. And I can't even describe it, but it flipped. And it was like, I'm not a statistic. Like, it almost like a snap back in, because my whole life when I was doing the drinking, the only reason why I was doing that was because I was trying to escape reality. It was my only cope. It was my only cope to get away from my obesity, my health, my issues, my problems, my failures, my whatever. That was my only way to cope. It was to escape reality. So if I can escape reality, then I'm almost off the hook, right? Then I'll have to take responsibility for my life. Well, now I got to the point where I'm taking responsibility for my actions, for my life, and and I finally was like, I'm not a statistic. And from that moment on, everything turned off. No drinking, no nothing. So I still didn't change the fact that I lost my life for 6 months. So where does that come from? So where does that go? I work, home. Okay, well, how are you going to change your life going straight to work, going straight home? Like, how? And that's what I tell people, that transformation, people, I hear, not to say excuses, because everyone has their own time when the Lord works with them. And everyone has their time. But this is my time, so I can share about my time because I use what He gave me. If you use what God just gives you, you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish. So I had work and home. So what did I do? I don't know why it came to mind, but my buddy that drove me, he knows me my whole life. He had those burn DVDs like P90X and those at-home fitness workouts. Well, I don't know why it came to mind, but I just one day driving home, and I was like, "Hey, man, you still got those DVDs?" And he was like, "Yeah, they're somewhere." I was like, "You think I can borrow them?" Because I put 2 and 2 together. They're it's a 3-month long program. I can do 2 of them. I got 6 months. Well, I didn't realize what I was getting into. I just knew, okay, well, here's an option, and gave it to me. And I remember I didn't go into it with any kind of set goals of, well, I want to lose weight finally, or this or that. I went into it with a mindset of, my back is against the wall. If I don't do something that I can control, that I can take action on, then no one else will for me. So I went into it where I had nothing else to lose. I had no other excuses to make for myself. I'm running my whole entire life. Now it comes to the point where what are you going to do when your back's against the wall? Are you going to start moving forward, or are you going to just stay against the wall? And before I put that first DVD in, this is what I tell when I used to share on stage and stuff like that to people before I was even saved. I just, something hit, clicked in my mind. I almost made a promise to myself. It's almost like a vow you make to God, like that you almost can't break. I made a promise to myself. I was like, you know what? I don't care how long this is, how long it takes. I don't care how hard it is. If I can control putting this in and doing it and doing this for an hour, hour and a half a day, and that's it, then I'll feel accomplished, like I did something for myself, that I'm moving forward in some way, some shape, somehow. And that's what happened, man. And you're talking about one of the hardest workouts you can still to this day that you could do at home. And I was, sitting at my weight, going from a 30 pack of beer a night, full blown alcoholic, the most unhealthy you can get, to cold turkey on a dime switch. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, I have such a drastic transformation physically, but please don't compare my transformation to how yours needs to happen and what the acceleration stuff, because I went from a full 180, like as far as you can get, to, to cold turkey, just going at it. I mean, I was writing journals, logs, what I was eating. I mean, I had nothing else to lose. And it took time still, until about 2 months in that I started actually losing some weight, like really losing weight. I mean, I was rolling off the couch, like so sore, can't even move. That's how, that's what I tell people. I'm like, look, you can't work out. Like I had enough room in a half spare bedroom to do a plank and to lay down. That's how much room I had to work with. And I lost 100 pounds in less than a year. So you can't tell me that, time or space and all this stuff are limitations that you only put on yourself. It comes down to how bad you want it. And by the time I got my license back, I lost 81 pounds. And I mean, I cut myself off from the world of Facebook, all that stuff, man. By the time I came back, I finally felt who I was supposed to be. Like almost like the sky's the limit now. Like, wow, like I'm just, there's, I don't know, I felt normal again, man. Like growing up, with the self-esteem and all that stuff that you deal with as a kid, that you hold and compress inside, looking at magazines and seeing other people that are miserable, but yet you'd give anything to have your life like theirs because they look normal physically, or just however you think normal in your mindset is. But where I was at definitely was I didn't consider normal. So I finally was able to be me. And I wasn't even saved yet even. And it wasn't until shortly after that whole, I actually kept going for another couple months, and I became a coach. And then I started running local fit clubs at my home, in the garage, in my basement. And I had people coming and having fun and working out. And pretty soon their families are getting into it. And pretty soon I'm running full blown fit club events every week and once a month. And I had the news crew there the one time, obstacle course. I mean, I had 30, 40, 50 people come to my events. I mean, I was on fire, man. And it wasn't for anything that had to do with self. It was like, I want to give back. Like I want to show people that they can do this too. And it was never no self about it. But then, not to say you always anticipate there's going to be something around the corner even worse. The reason why you've got to one over hump in your season that's help you propel you to get ready for the next. Well, I didn't understand all those concepts, but all I know is that last event I had an obstacle course, and when I went down to do the tires, everyone's cheering me on, news crew, everything's great. And it went from that to, guess what, rock bottom. just like that. I jumped down, my one elbow caught because it was a bear crawl, and my other elbow didn't catch, and it shot up straight up, and I just threw my shoulder tendon, everything just flung out, and yeah, I stood up, and I literally, my arm was looking like I had a chicken wing up over my head, and I mean, it was almost still a shock, so it's not like it was like agonizing pain, but I remember trying to put it back in, and it was just crunch, 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 and all I heard was just like a snap, crack when I finally got it back semi-normal. Yeah, and being hard-headed once again for it probably lasted about a month and a half, where I was literally popping my shoulder in and out of place just on normal activities, laying down, and I had to pop it right back in to the point where it got so painful that my ex at the time, my first girlfriend, she was like, "You need to go," and I was like, "Well, okay," and I went into the doctors, got an MRI, and still wish I had that picture to tell that doctor, but I remember getting an MRI and sitting in the thing office after that, and the doctor came in, and he's like, "Well, you're laboring, your shoulder's on, there is no tendon there, it's gone, like it is torn, gone," and it didn't hit me. All I knew how to respond was like, "Okay, well, what can I do to fix it? Like, what can I do?" And he was like, "Nothing, surgery." And I was like, "Okay, but surgery wasn't even an option in my mind." Like, and I was like, "Well, okay, well, how can I rehab just to try to get it better?" He's like, "There's nothing." Like, he literally gave me no other option other than surgery. And not that I did it out of lack of wisdom or some, that I was like being, I don't know, arrogant, but I was like, something inside of me just wouldn't accept that. I was like, "All right, thanks." And I walked out. I was like, I'm doing events, I'm doing this, I'm finally where I'm at, and you're talking about surgery and maybe getting back into it in another normal 6 to 9 months, and I'm like, that's no, sorry. And that was the setting point to where God really had to, I guess you could say in a way, humble me and get my attention.
Right.
Because that's where my journey with the Lord really, that later that week, I had an encounter. I didn't even know what an encounter was. I didn't know anything. I mean, I grew up going to, like I told you, kindergarten, 6th grade, Catholic school, altar boy for all those years, and understood the concept of God. It's not like I didn't believe in Him. I believed in God. I just never, there was any kind of relationship, living thing tied to Him. So it's not like I was like some fallen kind of thing, which I was, but I wasn't. I understood. But luckily, my ex at the time, her family was very spirit filled and involved with the church, and she wasn't particularly, but her family was. Well, that week we were actually going to break the news to our family that we were going to be moving to Florida because we figured we can do this together. We can't do it by ourselves. Let's just go down to Florida. Got things lined up because I had family down here, and we were going to move and just start fresh, new opportunities, more things, because things are slowing down when I was doing the fit clubs because it's outside, it's up north. Things get slow, hibernation kicks in, and people get lazy. And I was like, well, shoot, year round in Florida, let's, now's the time. So it was a Thursday, and sitting on the couch, me and her, and as we're sitting there, her parents are talking, and they're talking about they went to this church event, and they're just, that her dad got healed from his shoulder, and I'm sitting there, and as he's speaking, I get this knot twist in my gut, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, and I don't know what's going on to me. And all of a sudden, my like waterworks, like I'm talking about full blown, like not crying. It was just waterworks pouring out of my eyes. I had to get up and go into the other room, into the kitchen, wash my face, and it was still coming out. And at this point, I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out because I'm not crying. I walked in the other room and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And I sat down, I'm like, and I explained that I don't know what's going on to me right now. And they looked at each other and they were like, you need to come to our church this Sunday. And I just looked at her and I'm like, okay, let's go. And that Sunday, I got saved and I got healed right then in that moment. And this was 8 years ago, and I've never had an issue since. You can vouch for my pose, everything I do. I mean, I've never had an issue since. I've only got stronger. Healed, delivered, everything all in that moment. And what's even crazier is, so we had 3 weeks till we were moving. The first week, I got healed and saved. Okay, when God has a plan, it's amazing how quick. Never underestimate how quick He can work when He wants something to be set, when He wants to be set in motion. So that happened. The following Sunday, went to back to the church. Before we went, I was in the shower. So taking my shower before church, and I get another encounter. I'm in the shower, and all of a sudden, the water went, from hot, steaming hot, to like a coolness, like a coolness from head to toe, just hit me. And I look up, and I start speaking, and I have no idea what's coming out, but it's just coming out, like it's flowing out, just like how the water were flowing out. It started coming out, and I was, not that I was freaked out about it, because it almost felt so. It felt so right, normal. Like at that moment, it felt. I don't know how it felt, but it didn't feel like weird, and it was like gibberish to me. And as quick as it came, for I don't know, 10, 15, 20 seconds, I don't know. As quick as it came, it lifted, and the water went right back to hot. And I opened up the shower curtain, and here's again. I didn't even think about this when you told, at the beginning about the whole looking in the mirror thing. I looked in the mirror again, and at that moment, I looked at myself, and I'm like, I didn't recognize myself, but not in the way I didn't recognize myself before. I recognized myself, and as cliche as it sounds, I recognize myself almost as a new creation. Like I recognized just who I am, looking into my eyes, like, uh, and for the first time in my life, even when I thought I had the world at my fingertips, on cloud nine, doing workouts, had this new life, I still felt like there was a cap to it. But the moment I got saved and that happened, it was like the wall was broken over top of me, and like then now there is no limit. It's limitless. And I still don't. 2 weeks, not even. It's not like I'm putting a lot of faith in action right now. Still, He's just freaking rocking my world, trying to get my attention. And like, look, son, because that next week, I shared my testimony at the church and everything. And that following week, guess what? They blessed us, prayed for us, and off we went. So in 3 weeks, come on now. If He wants something done, before we moved down here, because obviously I've been down in Florida, down here since 2013, and He had a plan. He had a vision for me, and if that's how it took, to get my attention and to do it, well, then so be it, But so fast forward a little bit, when we moved down here, I was with my ex. She had a 5-year-old son, and we were just playing house, I like to call it. We just had a house, didn't buy, just rent. We knew people, so we were able to get by, and I was actually 2 weeks away from, we were like, we can't do this, to, I know Cameron, Slinky, and he was like, went to Destiny, that church, because her mom was like, looked up a list of churches, and it's like, I think this one looks the best. And we went to it, and that was Destiny. And we're going through the motions there and learning and growing. I finally was able to open up a job, and so I was working, and she was bartending, doing her thing on the side at night, and I was pretty much almost like in that arena of, wow, like I got home, got soon to be wife, because I actually ended up proposing to her that summer. So we moved in February, proposed to her that summer, and we were already set to get married that April. So soon to be wife, husband almost, and then father to her son. I mean, it was like, man, like I got everything I could ever want. But guess what? It still didn't seem real. Because we're going, as I'm learning and growing in the Lord now. I'm learning about myself, and I'm learning about why and how and who I am, and why. All this stuff. I mean, you're talking about a cluster. I was trying to, and then I'll put all the other stuff that was definitely not godly behind the scenes. Not living the right life. It was like counter active to each other, and it wasn't. My life didn't balance out, and I didn't realize that at the time, because I don't. I'm just kind of going through the motions, and then it got to a point where God really needed to intervene, because if He didn't, I wouldn't have had the heart to do it anyway. But it's just things weren't. It wasn't the vision and path He had. I'll put it that way for us and for me. And that's no ill will to her or anything. It wasn't meant. And especially when you're actually trying to walk right with the Lord, He honors that. I fully believe that He will honor and get you out of situations that you couldn't ever get out of yourself. And she, out of nowhere, gave my ring and back in the middle of the Walmart parking lot. And I was actually going to church that on my way home when I got that news, and before I met her up there. And I went to church to grab my Bible, because I left it. My buddies were there to unlock for me, and just such a divine moment, because talk about going through seasons and more obstacles that you don't think one can be worse than the next. Talk about a kid that self-esteem, all this other stuff, finally having this life, having everything, only for it to just crumble and no rhyme or reason. Not to say I'm totally off the hook. I didn't play a part in it, but I really didn't do anything to make that happen. So for it all to just be taken away and crumble, I broke, and I got on my knees in the middle of the church parking lot. And even though I was only, 6 months in saved, I looked up, and I still knew in my heart. Most people say the first things out of their mouth is when things go wrong is, why God? First. Well, that didn't even cross my mind. The first things out of my mouth were, because I knew He loved me. Like, I knew, like even as some of the guys there, they're like, you're only like a couple months saved. Like, how are you still on fire and this and that? I'm like, guys, you don't realize, once I got saved, everything clicked for me. Like, all these events I was doing, and sharing my testimony in front of hundreds of people, and traveling and doing this stuff, and like, when people used to say, how did you get the motivation to do this? How did you do this all by yourself? You cut the off from the whole world, just worked out, and that's it, and you just, how do you do that? Because most people, they need help, and there's no ill will against that. But God wanted to bring me through the ropes, hard knocks, me and Him. I didn't know He was with me the whole time. And I had no excuse. I had no, not excuse. I didn't have nothing to give them of value that I felt. All I could tell people when they used to ask me was that, well, how'd you do that? How'd you get the motivation? And I'm like, I used to come up with cool, catchy things like, I found the inner light and that kind of stuff because it sounded good and it kind of appeased them. But once I got saved, man, like it all came full circle. I'm like, Lord, you were with me that whole entire time. You helped me. You strengthened me when I couldn't move and roll off the couch. And you strengthened me. You imparted, you were there the whole time. And guess what? You know how I know, like from my own personal relationship, how good the goodness of God is that he didn't want 1 ounce of credit for that. He did that all behind the scenes. He wasn't like, oh, I'm going to show, through you that, I can do that. No, it wasn't like that. There wasn't no credit involved. He just loved me so much that he wanted to father me and to mold me and to transform me from the outside first while working on the inside to who I've always wanted to be and who he created me to be. And it was just such a instant, just like there was no, it was an instant, like you can't tell me otherwise how good God is in my faith that you cannot waver me. You can't. When you have an encounter like that, especially you're not talking about just you've done drinking and drugs and stuff like that for a couple of years or even your whole life. Well, guess what? You weren't probably drinking and doing drugs when you were in first grade either. But I dealt with stuff since first grade that goes way beyond just independency of teenage years and all this stuff. This is like from almost, I don't say birth, but it's young. So it was like, man, like I'm not living my life like that no more. It was empty. So fast forward back to, when I was on my hands and knees, the only words that I can say out of my mouth were, okay, God, if you want me this bad to allow something like this to happen, that most people, that's totally like mature, like down the road, like walk kind of thing. And I'm not taking 1 ounce of credit for it, but that's what came out of my mouth. That if you want me this bad to allow something like this to happen, then guess what? You got me. Like, and at that moment, there was no integrity behind the scenes, doing my own thing, kind of just going with the flow and compromising. And no, there was no, it was like full on, Lord, I'm in. And that's when he connected me with, my pastor, my church father, Mike Ashburn, and started discipling me and fathering me and loving on me and showing me how this walk with the Lord really is supposed to look. And not just from a spiritual kind of, come to church, and then do your own thing. It was real. It was a lifestyle for me because the way God worked through me, the beauty about how he worked through me with my transformational physically was that he allowed me to put it in perspective, replicate it, and reflect it onto my spiritual life and my lifestyle spiritually. Because I'm like, look, you're not going to just work out once a week and expect, to live this out for the long haul.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You got to do it. Not to say you have to do it every single day, but you have to do something. You got to take action and be a part of it and make it a lifestyle every day. And that's how I take my spiritual walk. If you're not speaking in communion with him or just in prayer or just even in the word or just doing the basic stuff, you don't have to spend all this time, but just be in communion, be in him, and be God conscious. That's the lifestyle. That's what I was like, if God is everything he said, and that's what I said, like, I'm like, if you look at what he says, and this is kind of like my early mindset, when it happened, I'm like, well, it's either black or white, right? I mean, I was newborn. I'm like, well, there is no gray area, right? I mean, if God is God and he says this, then you're either going to believe it or not, right? So I took that like black or white, like, okay, there is no gray area, so why am I going to create a gray area? So, that's why I went all in. And from that point on, now, I mean, gosh, it's been 7, 8 years, but I'm talking about when I first got saved in 2013. But when I really, really, really was all in was 2015. And I mean, I went through like a healing process of probably a good 2 years, almost a year and a half, 2 years, fathering and discipling and learning about myself and getting freedom and getting all this stuff broken off of me. And it was just amazing, beautiful. Like, oh my gosh, like that's when God started showing me visions and dreams and what I'm going to be doing and what He has planned for me. And it was just inspiring, because guess what? Not all the weight's on me anymore to try to create something for myself. Like my early on when I was doing health and fitness and I was running all the events. My team was rock bottom to rock hard. Well, little did I know that He was fine tuning that and sharpening that and pressing that and molding that into the diamond of what rock hard faith has come to be. And it's just, now I look back and I'm like, Lord, that was 8 years ago. So all the stuff we just talked about and what's happened in my life, now how does that translate into me now? Okay, so after that healing process and still going full on with the Lord as far as just no compromise, I met my wife at an event down in Boca. And little did I know it was my wife, but she walked in and I was actually the guest speaker. And and it's crazy because I shouldn't have even been there, because I did a Facebook fast for a month, and I got back on. By the time I got back on, I had 2 messages from 2 different people running the same event wanting me to be a guest speaker. And I was like, well, that's weird that they're not even in conversation about this. And I was like, well, it's only a week away. There's no way they already got someone. And they said, no, we love you. And it was a Sunday, and I'm like, well, I can't do that. I run the media at church and this and that. And it's really easy to get into the ritual of church that you can't, without, if you get in the ritual of church, that can be dangerous, because then you're never really hearing the Spirit and hearing what God's really wanting you to do. I'm not saying not go to church, for just some random reason, but like God really earnestly spoke to me. And I even talked to my pastor, and I was like, look, I think God really wants me to go to this and speak. It's not like I was going for my own agenda. I was like, this is one of the first times I get to give all the glory to God on stage in front of hundreds of people. I'm like, all right, God. And little did I know, it all came full circle from some of the events I did up in Ohio and Toledo, and friends that I've met down there that ended up being Kenzie's friends also, that moved down here, and she moved down here in 2015 at the tail end of me getting my healing done. So he was grooming me to be able to prepare me for, guess what? You've honored me. Guess what? And it was only 2 weeks before that. I was like, Lord, I'm done. Whenever your time is, because then you start thinking about marriage. And I'm like, well, finding someone, and then it's like that's where you get tricky and slippery. But I want to be full on with God. And after I gave that speech, it was probably the worst one I've ever done, because the lighting was terrible. Couldn't even see. It was all white, but the only face I could make out was hers. And some mutual friends connected us and started talking, and I was like, I don't really, not to say I was pushing, because I didn't really want no part of it. And God actually, I was like, you gotta sign over head to get into any other relationship, because I just want you.
Right.
And he nudged it, and and made the connection, and pretty much almost did the foundation for us. And we just kind of went with it. And don't get me wrong, it was still hard, because we went through a process in 2 months in our marriage and our relationship that I set lines, and I was like, look, we gotta see if we have some real raw here, true. And that didn't go very well. But I'm thankful that I was able to do one of the hardest things, because God taught me in that moment to be able to pray and have a neutral heart, whether she stayed or goed. Guess what? Still to this day, we're married, and we have a beautiful daughter that just turned 1 last month, and we have twins on the way. We found out in January, so we have twins expected in August. We bought our first home within the last year. We both got great jobs, and this is and it all stemmed from that moment of honor and from the Lord,
Right.
and still to this day, she'll say, something would not let me let you go, and not I take no credit for that, but I wanted to honor the Lord in that moment.
Right.
To where when my daughter gets to that age, like just getting pretty raw, but did your mommy wait, and just things like that. That really honoring the Lord, because He takes that stuff seriously, and He really takes it seriously, especially when you do honor Him. He takes it more seriously, I think, because He's like, my child, listen to me. Oh my gosh, because I can relate now. Having children, I couldn't before, but now I can. It's like, dear Lord, oh my gosh, you listen to me, high five, kind of thing. So I can only imagine how giddy he gets. But yeah, so that's my life now, and just the Rock Hard Faith has just been my testament, my story of overcoming obstacles and just sharing the story. That's what my journey has always been about. Is not just sharing my story, but empowering others to share their story. Just like what you do, Kevin, is just I care about sharing people's stories, because guess what? Just like my I'm not saying the slogan, but by the word, I go by is by the word of your testimony. Nothing. That's how you overcome everything. You can't refute, even if someone doesn't believe. Well, that's fine. You don't have to believe, but guess what? You can't refute my testimony and my story. You
Right.
can't take that away from me. You can't. You can't. It's rock solid. Take it or leave it, and that's it. And that's if you can empower people to just share the story for that. I mean, there's nothing that people can't overcome, but also can't accomplish in their life, and it's just so freeing, being able to live that life, because it's not for you, but and people might think now with social media how everything runs nowadays, that just sharing a story, it's all about you. It's all, well, I mean, okay, I mean, if you God judges the heart, He sees the heart, He sees the motive, right?
Definitely.
It doesn't matter about the people or what people say or think. It doesn't matter. People are always going to.
Mm-hmm.
But your motive is everything. And that's what my pastor, my church father used to always say, and that's what always sticks in my heart is, what's your motive behind it?
Right.
Because your motive is everything.
Well, what I was thinking of is like, if we exalt ourselves, God will humble us, and He puts us in a position that other people will exalt. Like when we're talking to you now, I'm giving you the platform, I'm giving you the capability to share your story and show what God has done in your life and through your life. And it's a humbling situation, because it's you're not putting, like, I did this. This is, you could see God working through your life, His plan. I see a roadmap, and He has had it from the beginning. And your story is, somebody out there is listening. Somebody out there is saying, hey, I'm overweight, I have this challenge, or I'm an alcoholic and I have this challenge. I've hurt myself. And now they've heard those three different things in your story. Let's wrap it up with basically, let's pick one of those topics and let's just speak to an audience member that is actually going through that right now. So whatever one you want, if you want to say obesity, whether it's alcoholism, or if it's a torn shoulder, let the Lord lead you on which one to pick. And let's talk to somebody out there, and let's maybe pray for them that God will intercede, God will work on their behalf.
Yeah, and only because I'm going through that season right now, like really coaching, life coaching people right now, is that I can work you out and I train you, and you can do all that stuff every day, every second, every day, but real transformation lies within. And if you don't have that, then it's building a house on sand.
Right.
Building a house on rock comes from within. And so between alcoholism and depression and all that stuff, because I work with those people right now, and they come to me after a workout, then open up to me, working out, and then the ministry that He's given me is just a way to navigate, to help people get free. It's not the main motive behind it, but it is how He's given me to be able to really minister to people. And I take that seriously, because when someone opens up their heart to you, God takes that so seriously.
Right.
And you better be pure, because guess what? If not, then you're dealing with someone's life. And so depression, all that stuff. I mean, it kills. Like it kills. It will kill faster than any drug or alcohol, because it might not kill you quicker, but it'll kill you slowly.
Right.
And you won't even realize it, because just like me, it happened slowly, gradually, but to the point where I was living in darkness, in full on darkness, like blinded, and not realizing that there was actually even a purpose to live in this life. Because so many people walk through life like this. They live off the news, they live off of events, and they're not living life. They're not. And I want people to live their life for what they've been given, because like I've heard some people, pastors say, like, what was it that you got like 1 million? It was some crazy statistic. I'm not even going to try to think of it. It was like 1 million something, but it was literally it was that you're even here right now, that you physically in this world, out of how many God chose you to be here, out of all the, no, not to get raw, but obviously all the little eggs, all the stuff, you were born, you were.
Right.
So you can't tell me that you don't have a purpose here. So, so your life matters, man. Your life matters. And guess what? You don't have to be some president or CEO or platform. You don't have to. You can change people's lives just like I did, just by showing up for work every day and encouraging them and loving on them. But it all starts with you from within, So all I can say is just, you don't have to hit rock bottom in order to change your life.
Right.
You can look in the mirror every single day. You can make that choice. You can make that choice to put your best foot forward and to lead with your chest held high, your chin held high and your chest up, not out of boastly, but out of godly confidence that you are a new creation, that you can do this. You can change the world one person at a time, one word at a time, anything. You start simple, big, drastic, life-changing things. They don't happen out of like some big explosion of just, don't get me wrong, there's big moments, but guess what? It's all mainly all in the daily, consistent, disciplined little things.
Right.
And God sees and honors each one of those. And so yeah, that's where it starts.
It's a good place to start with.
So you just you want me to pray for him real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Brian. Do that. That'd be good. I always like to end with a prayer. So,
yeah. So yeah. I definitely want to seal it off, because Father, we just thank you for this time together. We just thank you for everyone listening, and we just honor Kevin right now for his heart, for just giving people a platform and a voice to speak, to be able to encourage and be able to strengthen and then be able to sharpen one another, Lord. And I thank you that you're just doing work even right now as people are just meditating on their life and their events that has transpired in their lives, whether good or bad, that, Lord, that they can take it for what it was, but see that you've worked in every detail of it to get them to that point, that they're never too far gone, that they don't have to hit rock bottom or to have a life to change their life. But Lord, they can just be diligent in the day by day things, the opportunity you've given them, because this is a lifestyle. And just like I like to say, to be in it for the long haul. This is a lifestyle, whether it's health, fitness, whether it's just being a mom, being a dad, being a husband, being a wife, whatever it is, whatever you're called to, just focus on those moments. Live each moment for what it's worth. Be diligent in it. Love unconditionally, even when it's the hardest to, and just put God and everything in the center there, what you do. And we just thank you for this time, God, and thank you for all the ears that this might rest upon, and all the hearts that will just be able to be embraced by your love. In Jesus' name.
Amen. That is awesome. This is a good interview. I really, really enjoyed it. I am glad that we did it. Everybody, this is the Millennium Beat with your host, Kevin James. I've been talking to Ed Komara Jr. on the phone. Ed, thank you very much again for joining us.
Yes, sir. I look forward to the next time. Be encouraged, guys.
Yeah, we'll get together. We'll do a family, I call them table talks. We'll sit down with you and your wife, and we'll have a conversation about life that's going on today. So, again, thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll talk to you guys again next week, same time on Sundays. It's released on iTunes, Facebook, and other places that you can find your podcast. So, again, talk to you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in today to the Millennium Beat podcast. I hope you heard something that was encouraging to you. We'd like to hear from you with your story, so write us at stories@themillenniumbeat.com or give us a call at 407-624-9957 and leave us a voicemail. You may also find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we have a YouTube channel. Please like us and share us with your friends. You may also go to our website at themillenniumbeat.com, and you'll find our podcast and our YouTube video. You also may find a calendar there with past and future guests and dates and times. Plus, another way for you to contact us with your stories or questions. This has been a Millennium Beat LLC production, copyright 2020. Views and opinions of the guest are not always the views and opinions of the Millennium Beat LLC. You've been listening to the Millennium Beat with your host, Kevin James. I'm going to give you a little snippet of a show called Family Matters with your host, Paul Kindle. If you want to hear more shows like that, go to KindleFamilyNetwork.com. Once again, I'd like to thank Paul Kindle for the use of his show.
Welcome to Family Matters, a daily look inside the real world of parents and their children. I'm your host, Paul Kindle. Today I'd like to speak especially to those of you who are priests. No, I don't mean those of you wearing a clerical collar. I mean every father listening. You may be thinking, me? A priest? I don't think so. Well, before you disqualify yourself, let's take a quick look at whom God identifies as a priest. 1 Peter 2:9 says, "You are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood." Dads, whether you realize it or not, you are the priest of your home. You're responsible for the spiritual well-being of your family. When the moral fiber of your children comes into question, the buck stops with you. Leaving the teaching of morality and Christian values up to someone else to teach your children is far too dangerous. Even if our children are involved in the church children's ministry, good spiritual habits begin at home. Your children should see you praying and reading the Bible. Parents must first have clarification about their own beliefs and be grounded in the Bible. Then they must have the courage to let their children see those beliefs lived out every day. I've had several pastors over the years, but none of them compare to the impact my father has had on my life. He was not a Bible scholar, but he did see to it that we were all in church every week, and he reinforced what we learned there. The end result for him was 4 children who all grew up to be ministers. It's also interesting to know that those 4 kids produced 10 grandkids who are all involved in Christian service. All of us, the kids and grandkids, owe a great deal of our Christian values to one man who made the decision to become the priest of his home. What would life have been like without church and a father who would get us there? I don't even want to know. There are literally hundreds of churches in your community, and there is one that your family can call home. Dads, I hope you'll get your family there this week. There's no better time to start than now. And don't worry about not being able to quote Scripture and the fact that you thought the Prophets were a singing group from the 70s. Get your family in a good church and begin to reinforce God's Word in your everyday life. There's no better way to become the priest of your home. That's Family Matters. I'm Paul Kendall.
For more Family Matters, and to learn how you can bring Family Matters to your church or special event, log on to thekendallfamilynetwork.com.